This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Comedic actress Rose Marie died on Thursday, December 28th at the age of 94. She was best known for playing the role of Sally Rogers on The Dick Van Dyke Show, a role for which she was nominated 3 times for an Emmy. That show ran 5 years starting in 1960. She was also known for being on the Hollywood Squares for 14 years. We had her on the Stuph File program back in 2013 on show number 0207 when she was celebrating her 90th birthday. You can go back and find that conversation in the archives on our website at thestuffile.com. But I want to take you back to an older conversation, one we had on my old radio show back in January of 2003. At the time, Rose Marie was touting her autobiography entitled Hold the Roses. Here is just a little part of that conversation now.
Everybody knows me from the Dick Van Dyke Show, but I had a whole career before the Dick Van Dyke Show, and I have a whole career after the Dick Van Dyke Show. The Dick Van Dyke Show happened to be one of the highlights of my life, but I was known as Baby Rose Marie. I played Montreal many times.
Really?
I love it up there.
You started when you were 3 years old.
That's right.
How did you get into show business? I'm assuming your parents were into show business.
No, they weren't.
No?
No, my mother took me to all the theaters in New York. I was born in New York, and took me to all the shows, the vaudeville shows, and I used to come home and imitate everybody that I saw, and we lived in a railroad flat in the Lower East Side, and I used to go upstairs and sing for the other people up there and entertain them. And they were the ones that entered me in an amateur contest. And my mother was petrified because she said, I don't know whether she'll sing in front of anybody else. The phenomenal thing about the whole situation was that I sounded then like I do now. I never sounded like a child. I was not the Shirley Temple on the Good Ship Lollipop type.
Mm-hmm.
I always had a husky voice, and always sang like Sophie Tucker, you know. And so anyway, they entered me in the contest. My mother was petrified, and I sang. Now you can imagine a 3-year-old singing "What Can I Say, Dear?" after I say I'm sorry, and sounding like a 40-year-old woman. And naturally, I won the contest, and I ran into the wings after it was over, and somebody threw a bouquet of red roses in one arm, and somebody threw a bouquet of red roses in the other arm, and the audience was going, bring the kid back, we want the kid back, bring her back, let her sing, you know. And I threw down the roses, and I said, hold the roses, I can't take my bow. And that's where the title of the book comes in.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, it's one thing to know that you have a singing voice at a very young age. Either you have it or you haven't. But one thing that you're also known for, I guess because of the Dick Van Dyke Show as well, and Hollywood Squares, is you've got a great sense of humor.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. When did you figure out that you had developed that, or when did someone else realize you developed that?
I don't know. I guess I always had that. My mother had a great sense of humor, and she was just wonderful. She loved a good time. She loved to go out and enjoy. I really think that she wanted to be in show business, and I think it all came out in me, and she got the pleasure out of me being in show business. Because when I was 5 years old, NBC in New York had heard about this phenomenal child, because I was in Atlantic City singing in different clubs and things, because in those days clubs were like dinner theaters, and people used to bring their children, and they could go have dinner and watch a show, and it was a comic and a singer and a line of girls where you could bring children. And I used to play some of these places in Atlantic City when I was 5 years old, and people from NBC had heard about this phenomenal child and called me, and I was signed to NBC for 7 years. Their roster of entertainers was Graham McNamee, Rudy Valley, Amos and Andy, Leo Reisman, Vincent Lopez, and myself. That was their entertainment. And I had my own radio show, Coast to Coast, when I was 6 years old.
That's very, very impressive. Your parents must have been extremely proud to see your success.
Oh, of course. It was an unbelievable thing because the radio show was a 15-minute program on Sunday mornings from 12 to 12:15 with a piano player, an announcer, and myself. And to me, this is the funniest part of all. I had a sponsor called Julius Grossman Shoes, which is still on Fifth Avenue in New York, by the way.
Okay.
But the funny part of it was the show was coast to coast, and they only had one store in New York.
Really?
They've never understood that.
Now,
But people wrote in and said, that's not a child, that's a 45-year-old midget. No child sings like that. And so NBC was affiliated with RKO at the time, and I had to make a cross-country tour of all the theaters, which was sort of like the last part of vaudeville, and play all these theaters to prove I was a child. And there were many instances which makes the book very interesting. My father was arrested 158 times in Cleveland because of a child labor law, and they worked out an agreement where I would do this show, then they'd arrest my father, they'd let him go, then I'd do the second show, they'd arrest my father, and I'd go and do the third show, and they'd arrest my father. And other places, the money that came into the theater was donated to children's orphanages and things like that. It was a phenomenal thing at the time.
I've had the opportunity to talk to people in the past who have been child stars and who grew up in show business. Some of them are in the camp that they regret what they did, that they didn't enjoy it, and others loved it.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I had a very, very wonderful childhood. My mother saw to that. I traveled all over the country. Do you realize what an education I got? Instead of writing about it or reading about it in a book, I was there. I signed in the Alamo book when I was 7 years old, the Alamo guest book.
Right.
It was. I went to school, of course. I went to professional children's school, but the education I got on the road, being in all these famous places, was priceless. And my mother kept me, I hate the word normal, but she kept me as normal as could possibly be. I had to still make up my room. I still had to wash the floor on Saturday night and things like that. And the friends that I had then, I still have.
It's very impressive.
It's just me.
Because, you know, the Hollywood landscape, as I'm sure you're aware of, are littered with the wreckage of human lives that have been destroyed here, there, and along the way.
You see, I think now, you know, I know who you're going to mention and all that. Now, first of all, I have become very friendly with Margaret O'Brien. Do you remember her?
Yes.
We are very friendly. She's a very normal, happy lady who just had her birthday yesterday, went to her birthday party, and she was brought up the same way, and so she has no regrets either. There are child stars that, I always say this, if you didn't want to do it, you wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, Judy Garland is a very good example. I knew Judy very well, and Judy wanted everything that she got. She was, she went crazy, you know. She wanted this and she wanted that, and she blames everybody for her unhappiness. And it was her own fault. She didn't have to. If she didn't want to work, she didn't have to. All she had to say was, I'm not going to do it.
Well, I guess sometimes the fame and the glamour is a drug that some people can't resist.
Well, I don't know. I was married to a musician by the name of Bobby Guy, who was with Kay Kaiser's orchestra, and I met him when he was in the Army. We were married 20 years before he died, and he died of a blood infection in 1964. I have never remarried. I have one daughter who I am very, very proud of. She's a producer, and she is married to a very nice boy that I love almost like a son, who is a news director at NBC. I think it's all in the bringing up. I really do. I say that in my book, and I say that to people. I'm very proud of the way I was brought up, And I'm very proud of the life I've led, you know?
Right. I want to talk about Hollywood Squares and also the Dick Van Dyke Show. And you know, Rose, one of the things that's so interesting about that show, people talk about the breakthroughs and the strides that women made in roles in television. They talk about, of course, Mary Tyler Moore, who was...
I was the one that started that.
Exactly. Well, not only did you start it, I mean, there were other women in television shows like Our Miss Brooks, but they were in traditional female roles. She was a teacher.
Yes, mine was what they used to call, or maybe still call, women's lib.
Yeah.
I worked with the guys on an equal level.
Mm-hmm.
I made the same money. I was treated as one of the boys, you know, working in the office. So it was a breakthrough for women's lib. I was the first one.
Now, I read somewhere that Sylvia Miles was supposed to be in the pilot.
She did. Carl Reiner made a pilot. See, Carl Reiner wrote 13 scripts, and he had Sylvia Miles playing my part, and he had Marty Brill, I think, for Maury Amsterdam's part, and I forgot who the girl was. She was a very pretty girl, very nice actress. And we saw the pilot, by the way, and it was nothing like our show, you know. But he went to Sheldon Leonard. This is the story of the Van Dyke Show. He went to Sheldon Leonard, who was the producer with Danny Thomas, and Sheldon loved the idea, loved the show, but said that Carl wasn't right for the part, which hurt his feelings, of course. But he said, why don't you produce it? So he said, we'll go and get somebody else. So Sheldon went to New York and saw Bye Bye Birdie and saw Dick Van Dyke and went backstage and said, would you like to do a television show? And that's how the Dick Van Dyke Show got going. I knew Danny Thomas from the time, he came to New York from Chicago. In fact, I opened for him. See, I used to do a nightclub. I traveled all over the country. I played the Shapery in Chicago. That's when I played Montreal. And I played the Copacabana, and I played all the Palmer House in Chicago, all the big places. I had a wonderful nightclub act and was known as one of the top nightclub performers. So when he opened into Martinique in New York, I worked with him, and we became very good friends. And I always, when he came out here, I got married. I came out here to California, because this was all happened in New York. I came out here to California, and California never knows what New York is doing, or vice versa. So they asked me to play a place called Slapsy Maxie's, which was a big nightclub here. And I played there, and they suddenly discovered Rosemary. So then I went to Vegas. That's also in the book, which I won't go into now, but I worked for Bugsy Siegel at the Flamingo. I opened the Flamingo with Jimmy Durante and Xavier Cugat.
Right.
So while I was here in California, I was doing a lot of guest shots. I was doing Heinz Playhouse. I was doing Suspense. I was doing I was doing all the big shows as an actress. And I got a call saying, go to Desi Lou, they want you for a show. And I thought, oh, thank God, I'm going to do Danny Thomas's Make Room for Daddy. Because every time I'd see him, I'd say, when am I going to do your show? When am I going to do your show? And he'd say, your time will come, don't worry. So I thought I was going down for a guest shot on Make Room for Daddy. And the casting lady said, no, this is for a new show called The Dick Van Dyke Show. And I said, what's a Dick Van Dyke? And she said, just go down there. So I went down there and I met Carl Reiner. And Sheldon Leonard, bless his heart, he said, I told Carl if he wanted the best to call you. So I didn't read, I didn't do anything. I was just signed there immediately. I was the second one signed for the show. I said, who have you got for the third writer? They said, we haven't picked him yet. I said, what about Maury Amsterdam? He used to be a writer. He used to write for Fanny Bryce and Fred Allen and Milton Berle. I said, and then he became a comic. I said, he knows every joke in the book, and he wrote every joke in the book practically. So they said, you know where we can get in touch with him? Well, I've known Maury since I've been 11 years old. Maury used to write material for my act. So I called him up when I got home, and I said, they're going to call you about a new show called The Dick Van Dyke Show. And he said, what's a Dick Van Dyke? And I said, just get out here. So he came out. They talked to him. He said, I'm doing the show. I'm going back to New York to pack. I'll see you Monday. And that's how he got the job. And that's how the Dick Van Dyke Show started.
And it went on for 5 years.
5 years.
Did you think it would have the kind of success that it did have?
Well, we knew it was good, but we didn't know it was going to become a classic. In fact, there's a big celebration here, March the 2nd. It's going to be the first show to be called a legend, and it's going to a Hall of Fame.
You guys worked a longer year, too, didn't you? Didn't you do like 39 episodes?
That's right.
39 episodes per year?
That's right, and 13 were off for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But we did 39. We did 162 shows.
Wow.
And honestly, without trying to sound mushy, it was a very happy group, and everybody liked everybody. Everybody worked with everybody. Everybody cared about everybody.
What was it like when the show actually did come to an end after its 5th year?
Oh God! Oh, sorrow, tears. It was just. Mary was going around saying, "This is the last time I'll close this door. This is the last time I'll do this. This is the last time Rosie's going to do that." And Maury would say, "Well, come on, let's have some fun." And nobody could have any fun. Everything was very low key and very. Nobody wanted it to quit. I think Dick wanted to quit because he thought that we were dried out after 5 years, which is not true because we had never done a show in color. We could have stayed on the air another 2 years just in color.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a mistake. I think we could have done another 2 years.
Excellent.
The show has never been off the air here in the States. It has been on TV Land and Nick at Night ever since it went off the network. So it's never been off the air. I am on the air here 6 times a day. Between the Dick Van Dyke Show and Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares and the Game Show Network, yes.
And all the other shows that I did. Now, I did 3 years with Doris Day. Nobody remembers that.
Oh, I do.
Oh, you do? Bless you.
Yes, I do.
And then I did about 5 or 6 series, and I did a lot of guest shots. In fact, I did Suddenly Susan, Caroline in the City, and I just did a new show called Andy Richter or something that just
Andy Richter
started.
Saves the Universe, yeah.
Yeah, I did that. That was on last week. I didn't even see it, but they told me it was on last week.
Yeah, you played, Myrna Gibbons on
Yeah, that's right.
On the Doris Day Show.
That's right.
Yeah. After working all those years on such a classic television show like Dick Van Dyke, can you actually sit down and watch an episode like a fan, or do
Yes.
you think about, oh, that's the show where we did this backstage, or that's the
No.
fun time we had there?
No, I sit down and I laugh just as hard. I laugh just as hard. It is done so brilliantly. The writing was so good. The chemistry between the people is so good. And there was nothing dirty or sexy or anything like that in the shows. But we hit on topics that were rare, that nobody even thought about. I mean, it was a working group of people. Is what I'm trying to tell you.
Right.
A
well-oiled machine.
You bet.
That was just a brief segment of a much longer chat from 2003 with comedic actress Rose Marie. Rose passed away on December 28, 2017 in Van Nuys, California at the age of 94. She was so much fun to talk to and truly appreciative of her career, a career that spanned 9 decades as she started in show business at the age of 3. Again, you can hear another interview with her from the Stuph File Program back in 2013 on show number 0207 when she was celebrating her 90th birthday. And Stuph File Program fans, you can hear the full version of the conversation you just heard by going to our Patreon page and becoming one of the select patrons of the show. Rose shares more background stories about the Dick Van Dyke Show, plus stories about her days on the Hollywood Squares, working with Doris Day on her show, and more. Just go to patreon.com/The Stuph File Program.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestuffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestuffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.